This is Away Series 2, a podcast for anyone interested in a fresh approach to 12-step recovery. I'm your host, Steph Roberts. This is episode 14. Hello, my friends and fellow travelers. I hope you had a good weekend if you're listening to this after a weekend. It is Sunday, April 7th. I'm at home in Amityville, New York. Had a lovely weekend. Had to go to my husband's home group's 25th anniversary party. And the members who put it together did a beautiful job. And none of the people I dislike the most were there, except one. And I'm thankfully not on any kind of speaking terms with him, not because of anything negative, but we're not friends. Just listening to him makes me want to tear out my eardrums, but I didn't have to listen to him. I actually had a nice time. I always dread things like that more probably than I should, because they end up better than I think they will. Anyway, we are jumping right back in and reading from page 76. My little dog Uma is drinking the cat water. The cats will actually only drink out of glasses, people glasses. So all around the house are glasses of water, people glasses. Okay, page 76. Excuse me. We then look at step 6. We have emphasized willingness as being indispensable. Are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things which we have admitted are objectionable? Can he now take them all, every one? If we still cling to something, we will not let go. We ask God to help us be willing. When ready, we say something like this. My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. We have then completed step 7. Now we need more action, without which we find that faith without works is dead. Uma has now joined us for the recording. Hi, Boop. Okay, so to me, these are actually two of the most important steps in the book, and they are often given short shrift by even the most devoted AA members. And why wouldn't they be? They're given 2 small paragraphs in the whole book. I mean, why did the writers devote so little to these steps in the sacred text? I don't actually know. I haven't found anything about why. It's interesting to me that they don't that they don't consider step 6 and 7 action steps in and of themselves. The 2 steps together embody the idea of faith and work. Step 6, you become willing to let go of the quote-unquote defects you've discovered in steps 4 and 5. Step 7, you ask your higher power to remove the defects so that you can be a better person and a better person in the world. So even if you go by the book, the ask is an action. That said, is by the book for these steps really enough? It actually seems like a super duper lazy way out to me. If this is really about action, then God or not, it's time to do some work. Praying to have your defects removed is not enough, period. If a non-believer were to say, well, I thought about it and I know I'm a dick, I'm just going to wait for that to leave me. I don't know what the voice I did is, but I mean, okay. So is that enough? I'm going to wait for it to change. You don't wish for it, you work for it. So why do I think they're the most important? If you recall way back in the first few episodes, our discussions of cognitive behavioral therapy, then you have an idea. You also know by now that I'm a big fan of personal responsibility and the work that accompanies it. I think self-esteem and self-worth are built on the work of personal responsibility. So I see step 6 as like, I don't know, like a summary of the patterns you identified in step 5. And I read it a little differently. I think step 6, I'm ready to let go of each of these defects, flaws, damages, defenses, one at a time. So A, I think the idea of letting go of everything that ever kept you safe all at once is idiotic. And also may seem so overwhelming that you give up right then and there. Getting sober is uncomfortable. And this may make it seem impossible when it's not. And 2, small achievable goals. What we keep saying, small achievable goals. One thing at a time, one day at a time. All right, so I have a summary of my defects, right? One of mine was something like, I am judgmental most often in social situations because I am uncomfortable in my own skin. So I took that from steps 4 and 5. And right there I have 2 things I want to let go of. Being judgmental and the low self-esteem. Now I'm at step 6. I'm willing to let them go, but not only am I willing to let them go, I actually want to. They are doing more harm than good, and I acknowledge that. So this brings me to step 7. The book says all I have to do is ask for a supernatural higher power to relieve me of them. Very cute. It seems like the writers weren't really ready to let go of their defects yet. Bill did still really like the ladies. So 7, this is the step wherein, believer or not, you're going to start practicing being more mindful. You're going to try to identify the quote-unquote defect as it comes up and deal with it in the moment to the best of your ability. This is the beginning of a practice that will hopefully continue throughout your life, to which there is no real end. The end is more serenity, continued serenity. For example, I'm at a party smiling too broadly, and in my head, I'm thinking, like, I hate all these people. They're so stuck up. They're so mean. Now, when I'm doing step 7, I'm actively trying to notice those thoughts and change them. So as soon as I notice the thoughts, oh, they're so stuck up, they're so mean. I mean, not just have them, but notice that I'm having them and that maybe they're not great. When I notice them, I can stop and ask myself, why are you thinking this? Why do you think they're awful? Have they done anything to warrant your judgment? How am I feeling? Am I feeling less than? Do I feel uncomfortable? Is that perhaps the problem? I can usually answer yes to that last question when I'm feeling judgmental. I'm most often judgmental when I am myself uncomfortable. So once that's sorted in my head, I can now change my attitude at the party and find a way to make myself more comfortable. In my experience, that is almost always by talking to people, getting to know them, like for real. And if, like me, the idea of just walking up to people and talking is an actual nightmare, I may try to find the hostess, ask if I can help her with anything, clear away cups or plates or cutlery, give myself something to do that will help me to interact with the party and probably with other people in the long run. And if there's dancing and you like to dance, then dance, baby, dance. I kind of feel like I'm being unclear, but I honestly don't know how else to articulate this. After I've identified the negative thinking and done what I can to change, I then have to take a second to be proud of myself. That moment of pride will also help me to feel more comfortable because it will immediately improve my self-esteem. Thinking shitty things about people doesn't actually make us feel better about ourselves. It's just like that anger grab. It's quicker, it's easier than feeling what we're really feeling. But even in the short term, the results have a negative impact on our self-esteem. And the reason I say let go of these quote-unquote defects one at a time is because regardless of what you believe or don't believe, you're not going to magically be a perfect person. And none of this is going to just change by thinking about it. This is, you know you need to change. Now you're willing to change. So you're going to have to do some stuff in order to affect the change within yourself. Moving on. Let's look at steps 8 and 9. We have a list of all persons we have harmed and to whom we are willing to make amends. We made it when we took inventory. We subjected ourselves to a drastic self-appraisal. Now we go out to our fellows and repair the damage done in the past. We attempt to sweep away the debris which has accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. If we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes. Remember, it was agreed at the beginning we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol. All right. So I don't think you have to have completed step 6 and 7, at least as I described them, in order to move forward into 8 and 9. Because I sort of see 6 and 7 as changing, lifelong practices. So assuming you're always willing to identify problematic areas of your personality or life or choices, and you're always willing and always trying to change them, then there's no reason you can't move forward to steps 8 and 9. There's really no excuse. it seems like the writers felt or everyone felt that making a list of people who deserved an apology was a huge deal, because this is one of those quote-unquote great lengths they told us about earlier. But in my opinion, it's not really that hard. And I don't know if that's a female thing, if that's from coming at this without the need for humility in the same way as the book describes. I just don't think it's that hard. I mean, I guess for the super angry, arrogant alcoholic, that guy in my husband's home group I mention a lot. But okay, so you've already, clearly I need to say something to him or write another letter, like, that I'll never send. I don't know. Anyway, you have already written a list of people you were mad at, right? And hopefully, or at least some of them in step 4. And hopefully you've identified your role in some of those conflicts. So that's kind of your starting place for step 8. My sponsor gave me a great tip for this step. Another 3-part list. List 1 was the people to whom I owe an apology and to whom I am willing to make the apology right now. I'm willing to do it right now, and I can do it right now. List 2, people to whom I owe an apology, but I'm not quite ready. I know I owe it, but I'm not sure I want to give it. Maybe I'm still holding on to some anger or anguish. I know I need to make the amends, and I'm like 75-80% sure I will at some point. List 3, people to whom I supposedly owe an apology, but it's never going to happen. Not now and not ever. Your focus for now in the beginning will only be on list 1. The other lists can wait. And you never know. Some of list 2 may move on to list 1, and some of list 3 may make its way onto list 2 as you go along. I'm not saying it will. I'm just saying. Open mind. You're going to change. Your perspectives are going to change. Your attitudes are going to change. Just saying. But before you do anything with list 1, no matter how little the conflict and apology may seem, you really need to talk to someone else about it. That said, at this point, if you've been doing the work, and by that I mean not drinking and making a decent attempt to change some bad habits, then you probably do have the wherewithal to figure out to whom you can make a genuine apology that will help both of you. By now, hopefully you've learned to respond, not react. That's a big part of step 6 and 7. But that means it's a good idea to talk to your sponsor or a shrink or another friend and ask their opinion. Like, do you think it's a good idea to make this amends, or should I say it this way? My sponsor, for instance, said no amends to ex-boyfriends. Her feeling was that there was always an ulterior motive to be rekindling or revenge. You know, so that might go for ex-girlfriends too, unless you were like... I tend to agree, but if it's important you talk to someone, it's important you talk to another person about it first, not God. God could just be your own crazy masking itself. Let God speak to you through another human being. This sort of leads into living amends. If there are people to whom it really wouldn't be appropriate, or your motives for apologizing are something like rekindling or revenge or putting yourself on a high horse or whatever, the better choice may be living amends, and I'll get into that in a minute. The bigger the conflict, the deeper, more real the apology needs to be, the more important it becomes to talk it out beforehand. Step 9. We're skipping a lot because it's a lot of overblown and repetitive nonsense. Let's read on page 80. Before taking drastic action, which might implicate other people, we secure their consent. If we have obtained permission, have consulted with others, asked God to help, and the drastic step is indicated, we must not shrink. Okay, so by permission these days, I think we mostly mean asking the person to whom you wish to make an amends if she is amenable to meeting and talking, right? And as I said before, and you'll hear people talk a lot about living amends, that is not in the book. Although it is somewhat alluded to in the following paragraph, which is actually in many ways one of the most annoying passages in the book. But at a base level is kind of about living amends. It's a passage on page 81. Whatever the situation, we usually have to do something about it. If we are sure our wife does not know, should we tell her? Not always, we think. If she knows in a general way that we have been wild, should we tell her in detail? Undoubtedly, we should admit our fault. She may insist on knowing all the particulars. She will want to know who the woman is and where she is. We feel we ought to say to her that we have no right to involve another person. We are sorry for what we have done, and, God willing, it shall not be repeated. More than that, we cannot do. We have no right to go further. Though there may be justifiable exceptions, and though we wish to lay down no rule of any sort, we have often found this the best course to take. So firstly, I just want to say that I am a woman who would never blame the other woman. So, this paints a portrait of a certain wife or a certain partner who is jealous and who is blaming the incorrect person in a situation like cheating. The other woman made no promise to her for a lifelong commitment. Only the man did, right? There are certainly women who fit into this category. I am not one, and many of the women I know are not. They know who to blame. And the motives behind this little piece of writing are clear, right? I mean, Bill was a womanizer. But sometimes it really isn't the best course of action to tell the whole truth, so to speak, just to make yourself feel better. Selfish, right? Ruining someone else's life so your conscience can be clear. And the other person may know enough, may have all the information he or she wants or needs. Sometimes the best or only course of action is just never to treat someone else that way again, never to engage in those behaviors again. And the punishment, so to speak, is living with the shame. And using that shame, not to wallow around in self-pity, but to motivate yourself to do better. Do you want to give yourself more reasons to feel that way? No. Again, this is delicate stuff, and I do suggest talking to someone you trust about any and all amends and how best to do them. It may be that you can't make one because the friend no longer talks to you and never will, or the person is dead, so your amends in those cases is in how you lead your life. You have a choice in every situation once you're sober. The question you ask yourself is, how do I respond? How do I respond that best serves me and the other person? Something else I think is really important in this step is your own honesty. And not just the out loud honesty. Not just what's coming out of your mouth. What you're feeling, your motives. If this step is really and truly an integral part of staying sober, and I would argue that it is to a degree, then your apologies, your amends need to be genuine. The book says, and people in AA say, and you may believe this, and I believe it somewhat, that you're making these amends so that you can stay sober. But that shouldn't be your only motive. If that is your only motive, then can you honestly say you've let go of the negative emotions attached to the original conflict or event or problem? Saying it and doing it are two different things. If you're not prepared to be the person you say you'll be when you make the amends, then don't make them. Saying I'm sorry is not the point. It's not enough. And saying I'm sorry alone certainly is not what will keep you sober. It's the whole act of amends. The humbling act of an apology is only one small part of it. The larger picture is the more important picture. In the end, this is not only about you and your sobriety. Yeah, not drinking is about you. But the rest of it, you included these people in your shit. And your amends may be asking them to step back into that shit. So it requires honesty on every level. With all of that in mind, please also remember when you go into your amends, you may not get the answer you want. You may not be forgiven. The other person may walk away, may yell, may criticize. So let's hop back a little onto page 77 and read. Under no condition do we criticize such a person or argue. Simply, we tell him that we will never get over drinking until we have done our utmost to straighten out the past. We are there to sweep off our side of the street. I mean, you don't really have to say that part about your drinking, right? Oma. But that's the gist of it. You're going into amends for two reasons. Yourself and the other person. The other person is entitled to stay angry. That's his problem. As long as you approach it with a genuine desire to make right what you did wrong, then you can leave feeling better about yourself. Page 83. There may be some wrongs we can never fully right. We don't worry about them if we can honestly say to ourselves that we would right them if we could. I mean, that's a pretty good line. Now let's take a step back for a minute and put this into some perspective. Just like every defect does not need to, nor will it, disappear in your first 90 days, you do not need to make every amend in your first 90 days. All of these steps are training, for lack of a better word, for the rest of life. They're helping you develop new habits, use new tools. It's the last three steps that are the steps that will kind of keep you in those habits. All right, let's finish up this episode by reading the promises. I'll highlight the ones or comment on the ones I think are kind of the best ever or whatever. I'll be me. And then we'll do the rest of this chapter in the next episode. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. Yep, freedom and sobriety are kind of one and the same. At least that's how they feel for us. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. I mean, I still regret it. But the regret doesn't control me. It keeps me honest. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. I mean, totally true. That gets more and more true with every year. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. Yay! This is the program. We use our shame, our mistakes, to help others with theirs. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. Okay, sometimes it crops back up, but 6 and 7 have given us tools for that. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. I think this is relative, but yeah, we totally become more helpful and kind, and, it's just harder to be a shitty person when, you're kind of in the present and aware all the time, unless you're like a horrible person. But I don't think that's most people, as I've said before. Self-seeking will slip away, our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. True, and true at first, maybe just about alcohol, right? But the rest starts after that, and we do change, and we can keep changing if we choose to. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. Will it? You may need meds for bad social anxiety like me. And, in this day and age and here in the U.S., economic insecurity will be a worry, but maybe you won't worry as much about having more than you need. Maybe you'll find a way to be satisfied with what you have, grateful if you get some things you want. I don't know, that's how it's played out for me. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. That's like my absolute favorite promise, and it's like a part of what this quote-unquote training is all about. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. You don't have to chant that at the meetings if you don't want. I don't. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, more often slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them. The if there's important. They don't just materialize. Prayer alone isn't going to get them. You have to do some work. There is action, action, and more action. All right. I love every one of you. I hope it helps. Uma loves you too. Remember that no matter what, there is a way.